Design Board meeting.
Recording in progress.
We are starting our single-family design board meeting for August 12th, and we will start with roll call.
Thank you. I will start with roll call. Chair Lewis,
Yes.
Board Member Moselhe,
Yes.
Board Member Sherry.
Yes.
We have quorum.
Okay, great. We will start with public comment.
Thank you, Chair Lewis. I'll start with in-person public comment. At this time, I do not have any slips for general public comment. If anyone wishes to make a comment, they may fill one out and bring it to me. I see no one in the audience moving to do so, so we will go on to virtual comment. And at this time, I do not see any hands raised for virtual comment, and we did not receive any written correspondence for general public comment. So at that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Lewis.
Okay, great. We have a long list of consent meeting agenda or minutes to approve. So we'll start with June 24th. And I believe all of these are mine. So we'll see. Yeah, if you just go down to the motions, I'll review them. Percolate restriction. One second. Wait, scroll up. I'm trying to decide if the first item is phrased correctly. So instead of as, say and is stained to match the siding. Okay. And then the rest. The rest looks good. Okay, looks good. Looks good. Okay, so I'll move to approve the consent minutes for June 24th.
Second.
Chair Lewis,
Yes.
Board Member Moselhe,
Yes.
Board Member Sherry.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next is July 22nd. Looks good. Looks good. Looks good. Okay, I move to approve the consent minutes for July 22nd.
Second.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
Board Member Moselhe.
Yes.
Board Member Sherry.
Abstain due to having an item on the agenda.
Motion passes.
Okay, July 29th. Looks good. Looks good. Looks good. Okay, I move to approve the minutes from July 29th.
Second?
Chair Lewis,
Yes.
Board Member Moslehy,
Yes.
Board Member Sherry,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, for August 5th. Looks good. For item 3, we'd like to see photos of the existing gate. Okay, looks good. I move to approve the consent minutes for August 5th.
Second?
Chair Lewis,
Yes.
Board Member Moslehy,
Yes.
Board Member Sherry,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, and next we'll do ratification of the action taken at the consent calendar for today, August 12th.
And
Oh, I was looking for the draft minutes.
not the draft minutes because we're just approving the ratification. So only of the action, not the entire motion.
So what was the action?
So the action for today was that the project was granted, 3991 La Colina Road was granted project design approval and final approval.
And I need to make a motion to
To ratify.
ratify it. I'll
Yeah.
make a motion to ratify the consent
I'll second.
agenda.
Chair Lewis,
Yes.
Board Member Moslehy,
Yes.
Board Member Sherry,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay. Next are announcements, future agenda items, appeals.
I just wanted to make an announcement that the first item scheduled for today, the ADU discussion item, has been postponed indefinitely. The case planner, or the acting design review supervisor, Ted Hamilton Roll, was supposed to present today, but he is out sick. So we're postponing that item, and our next soonest item is item 2 at 4 o'clock. So
3:45?
Okay,
Yeah.
so are there any other announcements?
no other announcements. That is all.
Okay. Then we will take a break until 3:45 p.m. Will you let us know when the camera's paused? Single family, oh wait, should I wait till it's recording again?
We're waiting for recording.
It's recording. Go ahead.
Oh, was it recording this whole time?
No.
You should have said yes.
All right, the Single Family Design Board meeting is back on, and my agenda's over here. We're on the second item, which is a new item here for concept review. 222 Las Ondas. The project consists of demolition of the existing 806 square foot single-story residence with a 242 square foot attached garage and construction of a 1,884 square foot two-story residence with a 410 square foot attached garage and 327 square foot attached ground floor junior ADU on a 5,685 square foot lot in the E3 SD3 zone. The proposed total square footage is 100% of the maximum allowed floor area ratio. No final appealable decisions will take place. Are there any staff comments?
We do have a case planner assigned to this project, Kelly Brodenson. I think she is on her way. Let me shoot her a message.
Okay.
I would like to wait just in case she does have staff comment. I am not sure.
Okay. Well, can she at least present and then we listen to the staff comments?
Yes.
She'd have 15 minutes to present.
Yeah, let's go
Okay.
ahead and start with the presentation. Yeah,
Cool.
thank you.
So, thanks. If you can- Perfect.
Great. Thank you, Chair Lewis. My name is Liz Hughes, here for Tom Oxnard Architect. And I'll start with, so the way we looked at this design initially, there is a JADU that's part of this project. So for the rest of the residential portion, we were aiming for the close to 85% of the FAR, which is typically what we try to get to on our square footage for design of single-family residential. This neighborhood is on the mesa, close to shoreline, and a lot of the existing neighborhood consists of single-story residences, a combination of both single-story and two-story, but this particular area has a lot of the original houses intact, and so not an overly developed portion of the mesa, probably a lot less developed than areas that are closer to shoreline. There are some mature street trees along Las Ondas, and then it also does slope down towards shoreline, and so on the left-hand side of the property, the neighboring parcel is about 2 to 3 feet above, and then on the right-hand side steps down a little bit as well. This is an aerial view of the project site. Actually, oh yeah, and then you can kind of see this large cluster of existing trees that's about, I don't know, probably at a minimum 30 feet high along the back property line to the westerly neighbor's yard. And so that's an existing grouping of trees that's pretty dense and provides some privacy screening already. Here are photos of the existing building, just a small single family residence with a single car garage. And then the backyard, there's a small shed. And you can see, oh yeah, here's one image where you can kind of see that differential step down towards the neighbor's property. And then this is the neighbor on the right-hand side, which we actually worked on this project as well. So we've spoken to the neighbor on the right about this project. Then our street front elevation that we're looking at here, there's actually a large house. I think this is like potentially that 3-story house with the roof deck over here. You can't really see it because of the trees, so we kind of dashed in the location. But you can kind of see all of the single-story houses along the street. Then This is actually, it's kind of hard to see, so I'm going to try and zoom in. A diagram showing the other two-story residences in the neighborhood. So just kind of pointing out where those are, and then some photos of what they look like from the aerial view, to kind of give some context to what kind of two-story residences already exist in the neighborhood. And then, so we can come back to that if you wanted to look at any of these specifically, but these are just, there are 9 different residences. We also prepared a preliminary materials board just to give an idea of the character of the architecture. And then this was our study of the FAR of the neighborhood. And these were the 20 nearest homes. There was one that was over 100% FAR. The majority of them are kind of in the 70 to 80% range. And then a lot of the other ones, there are a few that dip below the smaller original houses as well. Our survey, and then the site plan. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our approach to the design of the site and how we integrated the program with this design. Originally, since we were looking at having an ADU as part of the program, we were looking at a 3-bedroom, 2-story house with a detached ADU. Part of that became a little bit difficult with the pie-shaped nature of the lot as it tapers towards the back, and so it's constricting an area that you could potentially have a detached ADU. It also kind of became difficult to try and have the living space, which was open to the backyard, kind of competing for that same open space area. And so the detached ADU is actually taking up quite a bit of area on the site. And so in order to kind of reduce and bring everything together, we consolidated the massing so that it didn't take up as much volume on the site. And that was kind of the approach to making a larger building try and feel a little bit smaller. We also have some 1-story volumes, the garage in the front. The ADU kind of has a little bit of a 1-story feel, and then a covered deck in the back. And then you can kind of see how that 2nd-story massing is pulling pretty far, especially from the northerly property line, because we were working with the solar height setback. But also along the southerly property line, and then in the front yard as well, we just wanted to pull that massing in as much as we could to kind of reduce the feel of the overall height, and then also reduce the amount of basically 2-story walls that you would see on this. So you're really not seeing very much of that at all from any view. So our floor plan, with the square footage that we have, the portion outside of the ADU is actually a little bit less than 1,900 square feet. So to put a 3-bedroom house in that, we really needed to create this open floor plan feel on the first floor, the living room, kitchen, and dining room kind of all in one great room, and then expanding out to the back with a covered living area that would kind of be an extension of that living space since it was a little bit more condensed. And then on the upper level, the idea, we do have an upper level deck, and part of the design of that deck was to locate it as far as we could from the property line, so bringing it into the middle of that, and then having the stair come up to an open space so that we don't have hallways going throughout here, but you're kind of coming into this open space and then having a little smaller deck on the upper level. And then you can imagine that cluster of trees is kind of in this area here. So there's not really anything that this deck is looking out over other than the own backyard of the property owners. This is that street front elevation showing the conceptual materials, the street trees. the side elevation along, well, I guess it says west, but it's kind of like the northerly property line here. Seeing how far it's stepped back along that edge. This is the rear elevation facing the backyard. And then this is kind of the one area where you get a little bit of a two-story volume along that side. And then that, let's see. Oh yeah, and then another thing that we explored to kind of pull down the massing of the building was to have a low sloped hip roof so that along each elevation, you know, we don't have any gables sticking up, but that eave is really coming down as low as possible to kind of fit within that existing residential character of the neighborhood. And I think that concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you. I'm going to do staff comment now.
Hi, I'm Kelly Broderson with Community Development, and I'm just here just to observe, and the project will be going to staff hearing officer for the accessory dwelling unit for a coastal development permit, although the house itself qualifies for an exemption, so it's kind of awkward that ADU is exempt from design review but requires a CDP, vice versa. The house needs a design review but is exempt from the CDP. So, and then Sebastian, I think, wanted to.
Yeah, and then one other thing I wanted to add to that is that because the project floor area is making this project 100% of the maximum required floor area ratio, there are several requirements that are needed prior to project design approval. And
Sebastian, that matters for the whole project, even though the main residence is less.
yes, or that's a good question. Does the ADU count towards the FAR?
The ADU counts towards the FAR. So if the ADU didn't count towards the FAR, the project would probably not trigger these requirements.
Right.
But that it does count towards the FAR. So
Okay.
sometimes we require these extra items unless the board waives them.
Okay,
He's
yeah,
gonna
thanks
go
for the
through.
clarification. Would you mind switching my? And just as a reminder, these are all the FAR requirements. Once it's bumped over, I believe it's 85%. So let me see if I can scroll down here or zoom in. Whoops. Yeah. So you can see. Go to the. So when the required FAR, right, not guideline, but required FAR is over 85%. These are all the requirements that we request for project design approval for the board. So you have the street silhouette elevation, panoramic photo simulations, story poles, and a 20 closest home survey. And then because this is at 100%, yeah. So would the 100% FAR still apply to this, or?
The way I'm reading it says if it's over 100%.
Over
So if
100%?
they stay within 100%.
Yeah,
Okay.
we've done 100% projects with an ADU before and haven't had to do the over.
Okay. Yeah. Then I guess, yeah, I'm reading this correctly. It's over 100. So
Okay.
then it's only the 85% categories that apply.
And it
And the
looks
board.
like the only one they haven't done so far is story polls, so we would need to formally make as a part of our motion if we don't
Correct.
want them. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
perfect. So we'll move to public comment now.
Thank you, Chair Lewis. I'll start with in-person public comment. At this time, I do not have any slips for this particular item. If anyone wishes to make a comment, they may fill one out and bring it to me. I see no one in the audience moving to do so, so now we will turn to virtual comment. And at this time, I do not see any hands raised for virtual comment for this particular item. We did receive written correspondence on this item from Trudy Adair Verbe. And at that, I will turn it back over to you, Chair Lewis.
Okay, perfect. So we'll start with questions. Who would like to start? Okay.
I have a question. Can you go to the site plan again? And I want to just make sure that I'm thinking about the public comment letter that came in, and I believe it was the neighbor behind, and they were concerned about losing their light on their garden area. So I wanted to look at can you scroll down to the true north orientation there? So true north is the rear.
Right, and it might be helpful in that aerial shot, we can point it out because you have the addresses and I can show you which home it is on there.
Oh, yeah.
the public comment came from House 255, and so you can see that labeled on your,
Yeah, there it is.
yeah. And so it's kind of behind those tall trees.
Yeah, and so when I saw that letter, I actually looked at a shadow study to see, what impacts, if any, the building was having on that neighbor's yard. And I think because these trees are already so tall, and you already have a fence that's close to the property line, the shadow cast from the building itself, there might be some extreme, like right before the sun sets, it may cast a slight additional shadow, but for the most part, nothing in addition to what's already cast by the existing trees and fence.
I can see that now. Okay. And is that cluster of trees actually an overgrown Eugenia that's over?
I'm not
8 feet
really
tall?
sure what it is. I don't
like a
know, but
gigantic
it's very
Eugenia.
big.
So
And we actually, I mean,
I don't think it's a tree. is what I've seen.
after this hearing, we wanted to get comments before we proceed with the landscape design. So I haven't talked to the owners about what their plans are for those trees, but that may be part of the landscape design to remove some of that. So I'll look into that.
Okay. And then I had one more question, just out of curiosity. I like that house, but that's a comment I'll reserve for later. But what would you call this style?
I think the idea was for it to be modern to a certain extent, but more of a transitional style where it does have some of the more traditional materials like the stone to kind of soften it up. The owners really liked the idea of having, a plaster finish on the house with the dark window frames. And so that is kind of a more modern look, but it's kind of like a modern transitional farmhouse, I guess.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah.
No more questions for me.
All right, do you want to go?
I have a question about the FAR situation that, just to clarify, is it we're calculating the JADU included in the FAR because if it's in the coastal zone, if it was not?
Go ahead. No, we are calculating the FAR in the coastal zone, but do we calculate it outside of the coastal zone too, in single-family residential?
I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. I should know.
Okay, that's another topic, but like I was looking, you are in the overlay of coastal zone. That's why we're calculating. Okay. Yeah, because I saw that you guys have two FAR calculator on the cover sheet.
Yeah.
One is without. I was wondering why, but like maybe just a clarification to understand if we are calculating without
We like
that.
to use it kind of as a frame of reference because the way this board usually looks at residences, is trying to get to that 85% range. And before the ADUs were introduced, we'd kind of stick within that 85 to 95 range. But then when you add an ADU onto the property, all of a sudden you're looking at 100%, which is a lot harder to kind of understand in the context of the neighborhood. And I think that the idea is that, we wanted to give kind of a comparison between other single-family residences and how it relates in terms of the house without the ADU included, to have that comparison.
Understood. And can we look at the north elevation that you have on sheet A62? So the setback here is 6, yeah?
Yes, 6
And
feet.
then you have like more than that setback, the upper level is setback more than
Yes.
that. So it's like 15 feet.
Yeah, so
I was like
along the
wondering about
northerly.
the comment of the neighbor. So we have 15 feet setback from the property line on the upper level.
Yeah, actually, so this is more like, because it's at an angle, it's kind of like the north, I guess, westerly
Yes.
property line. And so the neighbor that was, I guess, they're kind of like facing, if they were looking at their backyard, they'd be facing this property. They wouldn't be facing this side. So they would be looking, let's see.
We can
Even
look
on
at
your
it on the
roof
site
plan
plan,
might
I
be
think,
helpful.
yeah. roof
Yeah.
plan. I think there are more than that.
So this, yeah, so this is the location of the roof, and their property's kind of over here, along this side. So it's pretty far away from the property along the backside, in excess of 15 feet. I would probably say like
The aerial
20
is really
feet
good.
plus.
If you want to go to the aerial again, that
Yeah.
was a really
Yeah.
good way to see it.
Yeah, if we draw a section perpendicular to the property line, it's more than 15 or
Yeah,
approximately 20 feet.
so you can see here.
Yeah.
And then, the new second-story roof is probably, about in this area, not too much past where the existing residence is.
Thank you.
Can you show us on either the site plan or the floor plan, are you keeping parts of the existing residence?
We aren't keeping parts of the existing
Okay,
residence.
okay.
We're demolishing the existing residence because the existing garage is a single-car garage,
Right,
and while we a lot of times utilize an existing garage, when we're doing this substantial redevelopment of the property, we have to make the garage compliant, and so that kind of triggered a bunch of things, as well as, structurally, the foundation system is not really capable of supporting a two-story building, and so at that point, it kind of makes the most sense just to demolish the existing building and rebuild it.
Okay. And then from the front, we're looking, your second story is only an 8-foot plate height. That's, I think, looking at the elevation. Okay. Perfect. So I think we'll move to comments now. Board Member Sherry, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think the massing is sensitively designed, and the plate heights are appropriate, and I think it's sited well, and I like the simplicity and the transitional approach, and I know staff's already checked this for solar, but I don't think that neighbor in the back that was concerned is going to get shade from this house. And I appreciate you doing the solar study that shows that, or that proves that, and looking at that. And I think the FAR is appropriate considering that the ADU is included. And if anything's providing shade to the neighbor, it's probably that gigantic Eugenia that's existing. So maybe it would be a good neighborly thing to do, to look at like managing that mass. And since you're building a new house and you're going to have a landscape plan, which I presume we'll see next, that it might be a good neighborly gesture to look at that for her. Yeah, that's it.
I think comparing to the neighborhood there, the mass, the bulk scale is appropriate, and in that neighborhood there are a lot of different architectural styles, and it will be nice to have this upgrade that will affect the other new constructions coming to the neighborhood. I think having for future meetings, having an exhibit that shows for the neighbor that has comment, shows maybe a section or a site plan on the aerial, like a solar study of maybe later towards the sunset, this is the shade that it's covering this part. So maybe a simple exhibit of that will help the neighbor read that, or a section, whatever you guys think that it's appropriate, shows it easier to read. And I think in general, like the proportion of the openings and windows are really nice, especially from the south view. And the garage door, it's huge comparing to the massing, but it's appropriate, I think, with the materials and everything, so it's like blurring into the elevation.
Great.
Looking forward to have landscape proposed so we can see it better.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's well designed. I think it's a good example of how to do 2 stories in the neighborhood. And as we've seen, ADUs are coming, and I think this is a good way of incorporating it into the space. And I think our board is not concerned about the solar. We understand shadows, but I do think from a neighborly perspective, it's recommended that you meet with the neighbor and show that and help them understand. But I think the setback, especially from the second story, is very decent. Comments to the board, do we think that this could go to consent, or you want to see the landscape here to the full board?
I think it could go to consent. Yeah.
Okay. Staff, are there anything that we need to make sure gets included in a motion?
Yes, I was just clarifying with the case planner that the project needs to be continued indefinitely to show and with positive comments, and also back to consent for project design approval and final approval. It sounds like that's the motion. So that's how you would want to phrase it. And then with any comments, and then waiving in your comments, waiving the FAI requirements. You can be very specific using, I can go back to the handout. You can pick
They've
which
included the
ones.
rest. The only one they haven't included is the story poles.
Yeah, so I would advise that you say story poles will not be required prior to project design approval.
Yeah, I agree. Okay,
Okay.
cool. But yeah, if you don't mind putting it on the screen, I can just reference anything. So
And this is the FAR handout, correct?
yes, please.
Okay.
I move to continue this project indefinitely to the staff hearing officer and back to consent for project design approval and final approval with the following comments. The board finds the massing sensitively designed and appropriate for the neighborhood and appreciates the second story being set back within the massing. The project is sited well on the property, giving significant distance to the balconies. The board finds the transitional design appropriate for the neighborhood. Given the FAR includes the JADU and the massing is considerate to reduce the visible bulk from the street, the board is waiving the FAR requirements to provide story poles and finds the included home survey already appropriate. The board recommends meeting with the neighbors to discuss shading and solar. And the board looks forward to seeing the landscape plan and any site lighting.
I'll second that motion, and if we could add, in addition to site lighting, a color material board, but that's just kind of a given, so
Yeah.
we didn't really see that yet.
We
so-
have the basics of it.
Yeah, we do.
But yeah,
We don't need
Okay.
to add it.
okay.
Okay, so I'll second the motion, as stated.
Chair Lewis,
Yes.
Board Member Mosley,
Yes.
Board Member Sherry.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and it is 4:15. We will pause for 15 minutes and start back the next item at 4:30 p.m.
Great. Thank you.
here for project design approval, 313 Vista de la Cumbre. Proposal to remodel the 1,485 square foot two-story home and add 908 square feet to the first floor and 1,039 square feet to the second floor, and demolish the existing detached garage, accessory studio, covered deck, and workshop shed. New terraces, property line fencing, and site walls are proposed. Citrus and gum trees are proposed for removal and replacement. The project requires an exemption to covered parking requirements to allow 2 uncovered parking spaces instead of 2 covered spaces. The total proposed 3,443 square feet on a 14,897 square foot lot is 79% of the maximum required floor area ratio. Project design approval is requested. The project was last heard on June 17th. Are there any staff comments?
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment that this project has been deemed complete since our last hearing. We do need some more information on replacement trees, and so if the board wants to provide comment on tree replacement, you are more than welcome to. And this project still needs some stormwater requirement review. And I did also want to respond to some of the public comment that was received today. And one of the comments was on the issue for cars turning on the street with kids playing in the street and things like that. I just wanted to remind the public that's here today that those issues, though they are genuine concerns, is that this board can't really address them. A lot of the things that happen in the street is under public works or the public right of way. So I just wanted to clarify that, and for your 2 minutes for public comment, I do not recommend mentioning that, so you can save your time and focus on the design of the building. That would really help the board understand your comments and your concerns that are within their purview. And the second item I also wanted to clarify was that for the parking requirements, the project is not excluding parking on the lot. The project is just seeking to have uncovered parking spaces. So the lot has to have 2 parking spaces, usually covered. They're just asking for it to be uncovered. So same parking is going to be provided on the lot as is existing today. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. So if the applicants want to come forward, and in your presentation, let me slide up my screen a little bit. If you can make sure, you can sit anywhere, yeah. Oh, you could share the mic or, yeah. And if you can make sure to include the comments the board made in the previous minutes, those are on the second tab of the PDF, which is on here, and you'll have 15 minutes to present. Yes, as a part of your presentation, to include what you've addressed from the previous minutes. All right.
Does it matter when I do that?
No.
Oh, yeah, and just through the chair to the applicant, if you could turn on your microphone, it's that little, great, thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
and if
Okay.
you both state your name for the record, that'd be great.
I'm one of those ones that like the minutes read as we're
At the
going
beginning?
through it, but
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
It
I
might-
can go first, that's fine.
Okay, thanks.
This is not super rehearsed, so anyway. I'm Andrew Blum, designer for the project.
I'm Allison Blum, also designer on the project.
Okay, and I will go through the minutes first. Okay, I don't need to read the
You don't have to read any
description.
of that. If you scroll down at the motion, there we go,
Okay.
just those 3 items.
Motion 1, the board is in support of the relief of the uncovered parking as it is not visible from the street. Motion 2, study the height of the tower element and the adjacent left massing and how they meet to reduce the visible mass as it appears from the street. And 3, the board appreciates the proposed high-quality materials in the Spanish style and all its detailing. And then I read the action motion. Okay, that's it. It's
It's easy.
Okay. So I just we'll kind of recap the major points here. We set out with some goals in designing this project. Those were to create a healthy and sustainable and comfortable multi-generational dwelling, creating something beautiful that enhances neighborhood and street, integrating ample opportunities for outdoor living, and reducing the life safety hazards currently present due to the steepness of the driveway. So the existing property consists of, go to, okay. I'll make it smaller, but.
Yeah, through the chair to the applicant. Yeah, it's
Oh.
touchscreen, and you can also use the little plus sign
Oh, okay.
there too.
There
It's
could
all
be
right.
something wrong with the PDF.
It's okay. The existing property is a single-family house built in the 1950s with a couple later additions. And there's a detached two-car garage, a 500 square foot approximately detached studio, a storage shed and workshop, and a covered trellis and deck, which is legally non-conforming with the current zoning. Our proposed scope includes the demolition and removal of all those accessory structures, reconfiguration of the driveway, as you can see in the site plans, using the existing curb cut in order to conform with city standards and mitigate the life safety risks from the steep driveway. Relocation of the uncovered parking to the back of the house so it's not visible from the street. Renovation of the interior and the exterior of the existing primary structure, and the construction of a two-story addition to expand the single-family residence. And I will kind of briefly touch on just the site design again, because that seems to be an important topic, but we explored a lot of configurations. Some neighbors expressed concerns about the 3 mature large trees in the back, actually 4, I guess. So we didn't want to do anything to damage those. And then we also looked at a few configurations where the addition was going to the top right of the screen, which would be like the northeast. But that does shade the other neighbor's properties. So we settled on this this location that's shrouded by the hedges on the left. It doesn't cast any shadows on anyone's street, and it's all over the existing impervious, already disturbed area of the site. I don't think I need to talk too much about the floor plans. We've gone through some of this. It's all kind of a nice, elegant facing this courtyard. On the second floor, there are some bedrooms and another bedroom with an ensuite. One thing that is important to note on the second floor is we've pulled back that second floor, we haven't pulled it back from last time, but it's pulled back about 12 feet from the front there. So it's actually about 46 feet from the edge of the road. I know there was a comment on that, and I just wanted to clarify. We're actually about 46 feet there and about 28 feet to the very front on the first story. So in responding to some of the comments from the board last time, we did a few examinations of how to visually reduce the bulk of the front tower and just the front facade in general. What was a gabled roof on the second floor is now a hipped roof, which brings that peak down about 5 feet to where you see it there on the south elevation. That peak is now, the eave line is now just about 20 feet above the adjacent grade. So we're well under where we were before. As well as the tower, we pulled that down so that it's not any taller than the peak of the hipped roof. So the tower got shorter by about 4 feet. That also helped us with some of the proportions of the first floor. So the first floor actually came down another 1'6". The first floor on that front roof that you see there. The floor level is the same, but the roof came down about 1'6". So all of that was to try to get the proportions right and mitigate that visual bulk that the board commented on last time. And Let me look back again at the motions. I think that was everything that we needed to respond to, and that's pretty much the extent of the changes for this round. So I will end my time, I guess.
Okay, thank you. For the record, you have almost 12 minutes remaining as if you need that later
Okay.
to add to.
Okay.
So we'll move next to public comment.
Thank you, Chair Lewis. I'll start with in-person public comment. At this time, I do have several slips for this particular project, so we will start with Mr. Mark Kammerling. If you could please come up to the podium, you will have 2 minutes to speak.
And if you wouldn't mind stating your address when you introduce yourself. Thank
My
you.
address, 3063 Foothill Road. So I'm kind of kitty corner behind the project, and our backyard looks right onto the yard, and so this is going to impact our view, obviously, quite a bit, but also the parking area will be basically right behind us. I don't know what kind of vehicles will end up parked there, but yeah, it could be a concern. And there's, right now, as they've mentioned, there's a dilapidated wooden fence, and it's a 6-foot fence on their side of the fence, but the property drops down almost like a foot or maybe even more right near the property line. So to us, it's like about a 5-foot fence or even less. So I believe from what I've seen so far, we will be looking right onto their outdoor dining area and common area, their outdoor area. So, you know, I don't know if they want that or not, but that's what's going to be. The other thing I don't know. I thought I should mention, though, it just is a little irritating. The 3043 Paseo del Descanso they were using as an example of 2-story houses. Well, we just drove by that again, and the picture that they have on the first application shows it from street level, and it's pretty flat. And the new picture makes it look like it's perched up on a hill. And I thought that was a little deceptive. Anyway, the last thing, I guess, is there's not much consideration in any of this for the people behind, it seems like.
All right, thank you.
Next, we will have Mitch Coakley. Please come up to the podium. Mitch, you will have 2 minutes to speak.
Yeah, my name's Mitch Coakley. I live at 341 Vista de la Cumbre, which is just up the street. Number one, the architecture, Spanish style, does not match anything in the neighborhood. There's nothing. We're all Western. We have 3 2-stories in the neighborhood. One's been there since before I moved in 1974. I've been there for over 50 years. That doesn't block anybody's view. There is another one next door to me that went 2-story. Now my backyard does not get sun half of the year because they went 2-story. And we complained, of course it was ignored. As looking at this place, I can see the neighbors behind them and on both sides of them, their views are going to be blocked. Besides the people across the street, which are also here, is going to block their view of the mountains. That's really the biggest thing right there, is we don't have 2 stories in that neighborhood besides 3 of them, and they've come down. One we did complain about. And it doesn't match anything in the neighborhood. Why do you need almost 4,000 square feet in that little neighborhood? This is a very old neighborhood. I can't say a whole lot more about it. It is on a hill. It's going to block a lot of views, and it's going to stand out because there's nothing with Spanish architecture in that area. It's more Western, old school, stuff like that. Otherwise, the neighbors across the street, they can talk a little bit more about what it's going to do to their view. Obviously, the people behind them, it's going to block their view. And if we've been living there for as long as I have, you don't want anybody blocking our view. I mean, we enjoy looking to the ocean, and we like looking to the mountains. So that's all I have to say.
All right, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mitch.
Next, we have Lloyd Pizzato. If you could please approach the podium. Lloyd, you will have 2 minutes to speak.
My name is Lloyd. I live at 322 Vista de la Cumbre, which is almost across the street from the project. So my house is a little bit elevated. So I look across the street from a kind of a higher vantage point. And we have beautiful mountain views that would be interrupted by this monstrosity of a structure. And as Mitch was saying, the style of it is completely out of character for our neighborhood. I've lived there 20 years now, and it's just a wonderful, community-oriented neighborhood. We have block parties, and I used to know the former resident of this place, and we used to exchange pleasantries on the street. And it's just a quaint neighborhood, and most of the architecture is French Tudor or ranch style, and I just think it's really out of character for what we have as a neighborhood. So that's about all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Next, we have Max Baumhefner. Max, if you could please approach the podium, you will have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Max Baumhefner. I live with my wife, Kate Kolstad, and our 2 children at 316 Vista de la Cumbre, directly across the street from the proposed project. However, my comments delivered today reflect the views expressed in a letter submitted jointly by 8 different households who live in the immediate vicinity. And as noted in our joint letter, we support our neighbors' intention of updating the vintage home on the site. However, it raises a number of concerns that we all share. Put simply, and probably most importantly, the combination of the size and the height placed at the very front of the front yard setback would dominate everything that it surrounds. At roughly twice the size of most of the immediately surrounding homes and 40 feet up from the street level, it would literally tower over most everything else. And by removing an existing ADU, it would reduce the number of housing units in a community that needs more, not less, housing, despite the fact that it's increasing the square footage on the property significantly. To close, we support our neighbors' intention of updating their house and appreciate the community outreach that they've already conducted. But for the sake of the neighborhood and for the sake of those who live there, we would prefer a less imposing structure that is more in keeping with the surrounding modest, generally single-story homes. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That concludes in-person public comment. We will now move on to virtual comment, and I do have a hand raised from a Miss Haley Kolasiki. I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly, Haley, but you will have 2 minutes to speak, and you are now unmuted to talk.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Lewis, members of the board. I'm Haley Kolasiki, a land use planner with Brownstein. I'm representing the owners of 309 Vista de la Cumbre today. They are the property owners adjacent to the west of the proposed development. And so our primary concerns are the size, bulk, and scale, and the fact that as currently designed, it's just not compatible with the existing neighborhood. Some of our other concerns include privacy and potential shade impacts to the neighbors. The neighbors use their eastern yard for open space, their pool, their trampoline, their lawn, and the bulk of the proposed development is going to be along that their eastern property line or the proposed project is really western heavy. And so even though the FAR on paper is only 80%, what's happening in reality is that you're more than doubling the single family residence size. And a bulk of that is really going onto the second floor. I think the previous item that your board saw was a really good example of how to do a tiered project where you have a 6-7 foot setback for the first story and then maybe pull it back 15-16 feet for the second story. I think that approach and then a shadow study would be really helpful to have done prior to granting project design approval. And then also my final comment is just I want to remind the developers of the city's Good Neighbor Guidelines, which recommend avoiding large 2-story building masses at the sides and rear of adjacent single-family rear yards to preserve privacy and sunlight access for your home and for your neighbors. So with that, thank you in advance for your considerations.
All right, thank you.
Now we will turn our attention to written correspondence, of which we did receive letters from Beth Lang, Kate Kolstad, and Jane Gray. And at that, I will turn it back over to you, Chair Lewis.
All right. If you would like, you can use your time now or later if you want to address any of the public comments.
I could address just a couple of things that I want to clarify.
We can start the applicant time
sure.
again. Thanks. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to address a couple of things that I could clarify. This is not 4,000 square feet. It's just about 3,400 or a little bit over. In our FAR studies for the neighborhood, it was falling right about in the median of what's on the neighborhood. It is a larger lot, so that does make it a bit bigger. We did take that second story and step it back a bit. So I don't know if you can see, oh, it's not on the screen, but it's not too big a deal. But the first floor is actually about 6.5 feet from the lot line. The setback there is 6 feet, and we've stepped back the upper floor another 3 feet. So I think it's, was it 10 feet? I think it's 10 feet back from the lot line. And we have about a 14 to 16 foot hedge on that lot line. So visually it should mitigate some of the size from the other neighboring properties. And then the only other thing I wanted to say was I understand Mr. Kammerling's concerns about his views, but I did want to let him know, I haven't had the chance to speak with him, I wanted to let him know that that existing accessory studio, which is really close to his property, is about 19 feet tall, and that's at the highest corner of the lot. So even at the tallest portion of this new development, we're only about 20 feet up from the adjacent grade. So I think if anything, it will probably improve the views. And I think, yeah, so tearing down that ADU, we had it inspected when the property was bought. It has enough structural damage that from termites that they didn't recommend anyone going in there. And part of that is, go ahead if you want to say something. But part of that is also opening up a little bit more space for kind of a multi-generational living in this one house. It's really consolidating rather than spreading it out as it currently is.
I just wanted to add to that, we don't take the concerns about limiting dwelling units and the number of units in the neighborhood lightly at all. But that structure doesn't have a kitchen. It's not permitted as a dwelling, so we wouldn't actually be removing any units off of the site.
Okay, I think that's it.
Thank you. You will have about 9 minutes later if you'd like them. I would, before we get into questions, like to address a few of the public comments. One being the views. So SFDB it's not in our purview, private views, only public views. And so if you want, you can go through the process of staking a claim on your view legally. But otherwise, it's not in the purview to protect private views. It's just about privacy. And so we take a look at how close a residence is and where windows are placed and what's within reasonable metrics within the property. And I'm trying to think what else on here I wanted to make note about. Others I think we'll address within the comments of them. So maybe we'll start with questions.
Can you clarify the comparison of the current FAR with for the neighbors here? What's the current?
Sure. So, sorry, 1 second. So FAR is calculated usually with gross. The gross square footage on the property currently is 3,142 square feet. That does include all of those accessory buildings that we mentioned. As I said, it's kind of spread out right now, so that's part of it. The gross in the proposed is 3,484 square feet.
So it's not doubled.
It's no, it's a little about 350 square feet more.
So we take out those little structures and like just consider the main house. How much is that, like the square footage? I want to compare the main house mass with the new structure, which is like a one.
Oh, so
solid,
you mean just the
yeah.
gross square footage of the main
Yeah.
house is currently about 1,657, and the gross on the new is 3,800. So 3,800 isn't, just to clarify, it's not usually what you'd see on like a real estate listing. It's that's basically measuring everything under the eaves, anything that has a cover outside as well. The net area is like 3,400.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's better to look at the net area for everybody's sake. And can we look at I think like you had sections from that cuts the street, so we can see the peak and the street level to clarify how tall is it from the street, not from the site, the
I see.
grades.
Yes. I don't think there's a dimension on this drawing.
Okay, but we can like look at the levels and.
So where it says natural grade to remain here, that's roughly where the street is. Let's see, so this front facade should be back about 28 feet from the edge of the street where the curb is. I think that puts it about here.
So the offset of that height limit is 30, the line that you have, the gray line from the street?
I'm sorry, oh, up here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is actually measured from the existing grade rather than the proposed.
Okay.
Most of it is because the existing grade is what I was told to measure from. So that is height limit there, where it says height limit, that is offset from the street, yes.
And it's 30 feet?
Yes.
So one of the comments were that like it's 40 feet from the street level, so that's not correct. Just to clarify for the neighbors.
I think it's about, I
So-
don't think it's that high.
So less than 30 feet, we are staying from the street level.
I believe, I don't have the measurement in
So
front of me.
that's one thing that to be clarified for the neighbors. I think that was like my questions. And can we revisit the old elevation and like the south elevation, the old and new? Just quickly
Oh, yeah.
compare.
So that's this.
Yeah, have it open together. Just
Can I open these together? Do you know?
no, we can
We can,
flip through it.
yeah.
Just like
Okay, so,
Yeah, I mean, I think you can pull out the
Split screen
tabs
if you
and
want.
if you want, and
Yeah.
split the screen, but there you go.
all right, that kind of works. So yeah, the changes were mostly to this front facade. You can see the that front one-story portion is a little bit shorter, and then the hipped roof and the lowered tower was to visually bring down that bulk and scale.
Thank you.
Okay. And then it looks on the site plan, you are proposing a new fence in the rear of the property. Is that correct?
That's where the fence is failing, yes.
Okay. Did you have any other questions, Board Member Sherry? I'll start with you.
I have some questions.
Sure.
I normally don't, but I have quite a few, actually. The tower one, that was one of my questions. Let's see. I'm looking at, on the south elevation,
Mhm.
on the site plan, it looks like the driveway just kind of meanders up the driveway. And then if you look at this, now you go to the site plan,
Okay.
and I have a question about, because there's a lot of walls. And the walls are not only the height that they need to be to get to the new terrace level from the driveway level, but they're higher to provide
Guardrail.
a privacy,
Oh,
right?
it's the guardrail height
It's a
primarily.
guardrail height.
Yeah.
So now go to the elevation again.
Mhm.
So that height that I'm seeing there, right where your cursor is, that's 42 inches above the level of the,
The grade behind,
stairs.
yeah.
right?
Yes.
So the stairs, as they come up, that curved wall is creating a guardrail that's a solid wall in front. So, okay, I just want to make sure. And are you proposing a new fence on the back parking screening area between you and northerly neighbors?
Yeah, that's what I just, yeah. That's new.
Yes, yes.
And how high is that again? I forgot.
Currently,
feet.
it's 6 feet.
And you're proposing a,
We're going to propose
6
to
feet.
replace as another
As is,
6 foot.
okay. Okay.
Although we haven't spoken to those neighbors, so
Okay.
we could change that.
And can you show us again a photo of the west hedge that was being referred to by one of the speakers? Or it came up in conversation. I just wanted to
The-
see the height of that west
Oh, yes.
hedge.
Okay, there's not a great photo of it here, but it's actually this hedge here. Let me see if I actually think in the renderings you might be able to see it.
I was kind of thinking it would be nice to see if you could illustrate a cross-section between you.
If you go on
and
to
the-
page 19, you've got a good view 2. Yeah, there we go. You can see this is the neighbor's view of those hedges and the large palm.
Yeah, this is from down the street.
Oh, there it is. Okay, that's
So
the
it's-
existing hedge. Okay.
Yeah, we were just trying to give a kind of a contextual view here. So you can't really see the
Okay.
project very well, but it's to give an idea of what that hedge and the plantings there are doing.
And so this trampoline on the neighboring property that keeps coming up, is that?
I believe
where
that's
is
right
that?
here. I think you can see it, actually. I
Oh,
believe
it's in the
that's-
front yard.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And I should mention, this is to the south west of us, of this property. So
That's the southwest.
we're looking pretty much north in this view.
Okay.
So when we did the solar studies, that was part of the reason for selecting this as the site for the addition. Going the other directions actually blocks the sun from a lot of other neighbors. This doesn't really block any sun, so that was part of our selection.
I can see that now. Thank you. And I think that's it. Thanks.
Okay. I think I will start with some comments, which the first off, I think the reduced second story at the south elevation works really well. I think it helps reduce the overall size of plaster that you're seeing in solid surface. I drove through the neighborhood, and there's quite a few residences that are very close to the street, and I think you what you'll see from the street is that pushed back massing. There is a lot of residences, they've got a lot of landscaping in the front, and I think that that could benefit you. I know that you've shown it now a little bit in the south elevation, but I think adding in a landscape plan and screening a little bit both there and, you're showing very light this courtyard tree. I think it's worth for neighbors and for their understanding, showing what that looks like with the landscape and that, much of this gets screened. But I do agree from a siting standpoint, here, FAR is a guideline for us to look at. If it's under 85%, we're just trying to make sure it's sited best on the property to reduce the overall visible bulk. And I think you've pushed a lot of it back on your property so that just that small part of it is what you see at the front. And like we've seen right now, you've got a mix of buildings all over the property, and this gives an upgrade view of what you're looking at. I think when we look at neighborhood compatibility, when you get into your materials, trying to match the color scheme, but this maybe is more of an address for the public. You are allowed to pick a different style than the neighborhood, and I think there's a lot of mix there on what is preferred. What the guidelines require is that you stick to a style. So you've stuck to this Spanish style, and that then within certain kind of other characteristics, there's some cohesiveness. And so I think the landscaping will help that. I think one of the things that Board Member Sherry picked up on is if there's a way to reduce the wall and potentially study what maybe iron guardrail would do to help reduce the bulk. I'm also wondering when you're proposing materials, if you pick a sandstone for your stone that blends in well with the landscape, then what you're visibly seeing as your house and your massing becomes just the house and the massing and not what is needed to kind of hold that up. But I think you show through your renderings very well how much of the residence will be screened. And how much of it is pushed back. And we understand that, but I think it works well to understand with the neighbors and let them understand that. And I think, you are setting back the second story on the west elevation as best as possible. And I don't know if the neighbors caught this, but by placing it there on the site, it's reducing any solar issues of shadows because the sun is wrapping around on that side. It's not casting the other way. So by where they've placed it, they've now cast the shadow onto their own courtyard, not onto neighbors, because of the way that the sun is going to come around. And so I think that that's the best place on the site to place it. I'm trying to think what else in the neighborhood. I think you've reduced your second story massing.
Yeah, I should also mention we did whatever we could to pull the massing down, but the ceiling heights in there are already close to 8 feet, or they're not very high, so that's part of it, is that we didn't have a whole lot to work with. So it is kind of dug into the hill. The ceilings are not super, they're pretty modest, and that was part of our thinking there, was to kind of visually reduce that bulk.
I think for ease of privacy, it's worth talking with your adjacent neighbor. You've got very few windows from the second story, and you've got the hedges up there already that are quite tall, but it'd be worth working with the neighbors for them to kind of understand that, because even when you look at your second floor plan, they're not spaces that you're kind of peering over.
There you go, yeah.
Yeah, and then it's from like a hallway and it's a den. And then as far as the housing, I think you are incorporating, as you've said, the multi-generational. You've got basically a JADU that's not a JADU at the back of your property, back of the residence, where you've got a separate entry into this primary bedroom that can be kind of its own potential unit. Those are my comments. Board Member Sherry.
Can you go back to the south elevation? Was that? I think I was the one. I don't think I was the only one that made the original comment about
The tower.
Why is there a tower when it's a bathroom? And then I was looking through the site section and then that, I can see why you want a tower. It's a Spanish style building.
It's,
You know,
it's
it's
also
kind of
to mark
it's kind
the
of there, it's
demarcate.
prominent.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you've lowered the plate because now that massing of that gabled roof that was exacerbating the height of the tower and making it higher has now been reduced, and you've kind of minimized that tower to kind of the lowest that you can do and still get a tower. And also from the street, that tower is set back quite a bit. If you scroll over to the other elevation, that one, from the street, that tower, you will see a little bit of it, but it's not looming over the street anymore. So I appreciate that. I do think that, you know, in the first review, when we saw that tower and then the gable plaster and then all the walls that were providing the kind of solid guardrail going up, it was all combined, turning into a somewhat of a, for lack of a better word, a fortress-like kind of a development. But I still think that I agree with Chair Lewis that elimination of that front wall by 4.5 feet is going to do huge things to the massing of this house. And I can understand and appreciate why you want a wall, because you're looking at yourself going, they're not going to, you know, they want their privacy or whatever. But I think it's exacerbating the massing. And I think that an open guardrail, even if you planted it, would be a lot more soft, and it wouldn't have this additional massing element. So I can approve.
Can I ask a question about that?
It's not quite yet. I'm almost done.
Oh, sorry.
I thought I was done, and then I had one more thing to say. Anyway, so I've said enough.
I didn't interrupt.
I think that I could approve the massing at the tower, the way it's been redesigned, but I still think that the 42-inch high wall is exacerbating the massing, in my opinion. And that's it. Go ahead.
My question was about the wall. Part of the reason that I didn't opt to immediately bring it down and show something iron, I was kind of worried if you look at that elevation of the whole thing looking like a tower, and in some ways the wall is set back from that front facade, so it was meant to kind of make it feel less tall, like it's sticking out there on its own. But I'm not sure if you share that opinion, so I'd be curious to hear your thoughts.
I appreciate your response, but I don't think it's doing as much of what you think it's doing as, I think it's doing more exacerbating the massing than it is helping soften the apparent height of the tower.
Okay.
Board Member Sherry, you think for both walls or just the one that wraps on the street side of the stairs? Like the other
one
one
that-
could stay?
Yeah, it's the one that's the curved wall as you ascend the stairs on the right. If that were reduced by 42 inches to be an open guardrail, it would do a lot for the massing. And then we're getting to, in my opinion, a massing somewhat consistent with the neighborhood with the 2 stories. And this is I will say that it's not easy being the first one in the neighborhood that is remodeling and essentially building a new home on this property. Eventually, somebody else is going to come along, and it might be a little easier for them. But being the first ones, it's hard for neighbors to accept what's going on to their neighborhoods. And we have to look at compatible massing. And so that's what we're trying to get to as a board, is which is why we're making comments such as reduce the height of the tower, reduce the massing of the walls. And so that's our charge.
Yeah, I think the other tricky thing is you do have a larger property and you are allowed more square footage. And
Yeah.
so that's one of the things that's tricky within a neighborhood where it's not all consistent. And that is what the zoning and all the regulations allow. Board Member Mosley?
Yes. I agree with a lot of comments that was made by Chair Lewis and Board Member Sherry, especially the south elevation. I was thinking that one of the reasons maybe that wall looks so big, the curve make it like a focal point, you know, like architecturally like a focal point that like you just like when you look at the elevation, the first thing you see it's the curve, and that like a little bit like the connotation of like a mansion comes to mind, you know, more like it's a Spanish style like in the back, but that one just like it's a focal point. So I'm trying to imagine like, yeah, removing it, having a like an open handrail and a larger landscape in front of it. It will like blur with the neighborhood and the streetscape, you know, when you're going there and like you have now like low level landscape, but if it's like a higher hedge, so you don't even see the iron handrail by time, maybe in a year or two. So that's one of the things. The other thing I think on south elevation, the window, which is on the, I believe it will be west side of the tower, the little window. I'm forgetting like what's in the interior.
That's a guest suite bathroom.
So-
Both of those windows, actually.
I totally understand the sensitivity of like having like a smaller windows of like being aligned with the Spanish style, but I think the proportion of that window with the mass make that mass looking larger. So maybe like revisiting that elevation with the openings, because it's the view that you're looking from the street, and we're seeing so much plaster there. you
On that
know.
note, one of the things I was wondering, what do you think about like planters, like a planter bed or something?
Or like
It's
maybe
above
like
the
having
toilet,
like
that's why I
I mean,
don't
like
know.
a window
Yeah.
box planter?
like this one, like it's not
I know.
aligned, not head, not
Yeah.
sill height, and it's like smaller on that, like larger. So maybe
We had looked
revisiting
at-
that, maybe it's like 2 windows, if it like we're
Or,
keeping like
or
a
a
proportion.
French door
Shutter.
with a Juliet balcony
Right.
or something. More glazing would,
Yeah.
it's completely true that it would
Yeah.
lessen
This is
the apparent mass of that elevation.
I think the heat proof helped so much to break the height, and that's a really good move. The other thing is like I know that landscape architect will come and like things will change. The part that you're showing like a purple, I don't know, lavender hedge, maybe if these are landscape, I'm not a landscape architect, so like covering the wall, like landscape that are falling, so we don't see the huge wall as well on the other side of the steps that are going up. So we're not seeing that much like sandstone
Yes,
wall
yeah.
from the street.
That's
So
great.
that's like,
Appreciate that.
it will break the height from the streetscape. And the other thing Chair Louise mentioned, the site is larger comparing to the other sites on the street, but the other thing is like the shape of the site, I think, being it in the corner of that street, it's like making it a little bit not like a regular typical site, so you have different views. And I think for the neighbors, one of the neighbors that is on the west that has the pool, maybe a study of for if you guys like reach out to the neighbors, like a shadow study, so that they make sure that their pool is not shaded, which I don't think in the mornings. Even like in the mornings, I think it's like the southern part, like the entry part of their property will be shaded a little bit where like the southwest, I think, for
south.
there will be southeast, I think.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So maybe like showing a visual for the neighbor that will help. The other thing, and the west elevation where you have smaller openings and windows, I know that the elevation are shown without, like this elevation I think specifically is shown without any landscape, but I saw that there are existing trees.
Yeah, so that's the side yard. Most of the trees are on the neighbor's property.
Oh, I see.
And there is one tree on our side yard there.
I think it will be helpful to show that elevation with the existing landscape or any proposed in the property, because that is one of the elevation that it's like showing, because it's the whole length of the house, it's showing like really massive.
Yeah.
So in reality, with all the landscape, it will be felt differently. So I think like, because your elevations are rendered elevations, showing all the existing or proposed landscape will help a lot to visualize for the neighbors. And I think like a 3D render, like maybe an aerial or something that neighbor can like imagine.
I know, that's what I'd like to discuss, because we've saw in public comments about story poles, which are not required when it's under 85% of the FAR. And I think we, as architects, understand this scale, but I think it would be beneficial for correspondence with neighbors of doing more rendering, you know, whatever is kind of within your means of helping to show what that looks like with the landscaping. That's a recommendation. I don't think it's a requirement from our board, but I'd be curious.
And I had one more thing to say about the tower. Because I just don't think it's just not quite there, but I think you're getting somewhere. So I wanted to make sure that the board felt or knows how I feel about this massing in the tower, and I appreciate the efforts that you're making. One more thing about the tower, if you go to that south elevation again, is, and the reason that I understand why you want a tower is it's a tower, and there are other ways of, but there are, because you've got a relief on the east side, a small overhang, and then I can see that you have, the tower also has a horizontal relief between the hip roof and the tower roof. So another way, when you're confronted with an issue where you want a tower and it just doesn't happen to be in the greatest spot for the massing, and it's not really working, but got to have that tower, then you can lower the plate and make the tower, define the tower by the change in horizontal plane.
You mean match up the eaves?
It can come out, the eaves can come out to reflect the same overhang that follows the tower walls that are sticking out on both sides. Your tower is extended beyond both adjacent walls at 90 degrees. So you don't have to extend the plate height of the tower to make it look like a tower. It can still read as a tower. You can pick up the base of it with corbels that extend, and I think that would go a long way to also, coming up with a solution that is kind of a nice place for where this massing ends up. That in combination with the lowering of the guardrail. And the enlargement slightly of the glazing. I think all of that combined could really make it a acceptable massing project from the street.
Could you clarify if the lowering that plate height is a requirement? We did test it. I don't think you're going to like it very much, but we can, if you want to see that, we can show it.
I'm still struggling with the height of the tower is what I'm saying.
It's not a requirement for me. I think you're showing already that it's not significant. It's lower or the same height as the adjacent eave. I think what's really going to help more than that is making better proportions with the windows and or planters or something like that on that elevation. Enough. I think that is going to help more.
But I'm not sure I wouldn't like it. I say I won't like it, but I'm not sure I wouldn't. So
yeah, I know.
I'm not telling you to do it or that I wouldn't approve the project without it. But those, maybe you can achieve it with the other suggestions.
Okay.
Is there other site lighting proposed? I see it's on the building. Is there any in the landscaping?
We did not draw any in the landscaping.
Okay.
I should mention, we do not have a formally drawn landscape plan with this. I'm waiting for my license, so I have to wait until I can draw that. Okay. But it's coming, so
okay.
For the next one, it'll be there.
Okay. It sounds like what I'm hearing from the board is that we'd like to see you again for PDA. Is that correct? Okay. I think, also one quick question. When we're looking at the south elevation, I see like a L. Is there like a built-up frame that the landscape's on to the left of those 3 window or doors? Back on the courtyard side, there's like an angle of a beam.
I'm sorry, I'm not.
Here, what's happening here?
Oh, you're seeing a trellis beyond.
Thank you. Okay.
It's on the
Oh,
east
thank you,
elevation
thank you,
there.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Okay. I move to continue this project indefinitely to the full board with the following comments. The board recommends studying the south elevation, second story, to reduce the visible appearance of the mass. The board recommends either adjusting the proportion of glazing and or planters and or reducing the height of the tower element. The board would like to see the recommended stone for the site walls and would prefer to see something that blends in well with the surrounding landscape. The board recommends reducing the massing of the site wall along the entry stairs to reduce the visible portion of stone and solid massing. The board recommends considering plantings that drape over the site walls at the south elevation. The board would like to see a more detailed landscape plan and understand the plantings, especially in the front yard, that help to screen the building. In general, the board finds the footprint of the proposed residence appropriate for the site, but would like to see minor modifications to reduce the visible perceived massing from the street. The board recommends the applicant consult with the neighbors to help them understand the massing and how the residence is screened and any implications on lighting and solar. The board can continue to support the uncovered parking spaces as they are in the rear of the property and are screened by fencing and landscaping.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, Chair Lewis,
Yes.
Board Member Moslahi,
Yes.
Board Member Sherry. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, the Single Family Design Board meeting has ended for August 12th.